Hi, beautiful people. Welcome to the Fort Salem Library, where we read you your fanfiction. So sit down or don't, relax or don't, and enjoy these stories in a way you have not before. We at Fort Salem Library do not own Motherland Fort Salem or any of the related characters. The Motherland Fort Salem series is created by Elliot Lawrence and owned by Freeform. This story is a work of fanfiction and is meant for entertainment only. We are not making any profit from these stories. All rights of the original Motherland Fort Salem story belong to Freeform. We also do not own Catch the Moon Together, or any of its original characters and storylines. We did, however, get permission from the author to read their story. This story was created and written by Pengukat, and you can find a link in our show notes. This story is being read to you by Britt. Catch the Moon Together. In her long life, people have called her many things. My child, her mother would say sternly, peering over her shoulder at whatever mischief she'd gotten up to in the corner while her mother was busy. Sarah? Sala? Sally! Her sister would call, too young to form the sounds, and the name stuck among the neighbors. Then, later, witch, the villagers would say, in wonder or in accusation. First quietly under their breath, and then louder, the cries following them across mountains and oceans in time. And then, at the point of no return, monster. And after that, our leader, cry her people in relief. Commander. Now those who follow lend her strength. And then, for centuries after, she is simply General. After she dies, all that is behind her. Upon her rebirth, her name is carried in whispers on the wind. Prophetess, legend, savior, myth, and yet again, sometimes, monster. It is Telly Craven who shows her the simple joy in being called Sarah. Sarah doesn't even notice when it begins, but at some point her name passes through the other's lips, not with shy tentativeness, but with an affectionate ease and confidence, like the name Sarah was always intended for Tally, and Tally alone, to call. It is a ridiculous notion, and yet it is not the only time Sarah has felt ridiculous recently in regards to Tally. For instance, Sarah is currently in the opposite of her natural habitat, which since the Camarilla War ended, mostly consists of, but is not limited to, singing, working, traveling underground, moving mountains, forging rivers, folding reality, being on the move. She might be called upon and needed at any hour of the day in any corner of the earth. Having been granted practical immortality by an all-powerful mother has put her in a unique position to put it lightly, save the world. But at the moment, she's doing no rescuing. Instead, she's laying on her side, remaining as still as she can, occupying exactly half of an overly soft mattress sized for one, watching the rise and fall of every breath taken by the woman in the early thralls of sleep on the other half of the mattress. And the reason for this is only because Tally has told her moments before that she loves the feeling of falling asleep with someone at her side, and that it's been so long, too long since it happened, and, oh, one night couldn't possibly hurt. Couldn't Sarah just stay the night before wishing off again to the other side of the world again? And somehow, she, who has lived longer than any human has the right to, died and came back to life, isn't even sure if she's human anymore. To the woman that says Sarah in her own special way, and smiles winningly and shyly at her in the way that only she smiles, has forgotten how to answer with anything save a breathless, "Yes, of course I can." When was the last time Sarah found herself in this position? In another lifetime. She snuggled with her mother and sister in the same bed, slept alongside her troops and sisters in the cold, and in bunks and all manner of conditions. Once a year, on Beltane, she would allow herself to set aside the general and indulge in the needs of the flesh. But for many years now, the body Sarah had occupied at the time has not needed sleep. Even now, what passes for a facsimile of the rest she needs resembles at most a brief, infrequent hibernation. To simply lie alongside another, listening, observing, and breathing, in shared companionship and vulnerability. Just like for Tally, it has been a long, long time for Sarah as well. I can feel you watching me. Tally's eyes are still closed, and her lips move as little as possible when she speaks, but the corners have curled up in amusement. Does it bother you? Sarah whispered. Tally's eyes fly wide open as her neck snaps in Sarah's direction. Of course not. Now they are gazing into each other's eyes, glistening in the dark, as Tally shifts the rest of her body so that they are fully facing each other. I just didn't want you to be, uncomfortable, Tally admits quietly. I'm really glad you stayed. If I'm uncomfortable, I'll let you know, Sarah offers after a while. No, you won't. There's no malice in Tally's tone, just matter-of-factness. Okay, Tally was probably right there. Something about the dark has them both speaking in a hush, and the stillness prompts a burst of honesty from Sarah. I'm always uncomfortable with you, she admits, but in the best way possible. Oh? The upwards tug at the corner of Tally's lips grows as she relaxes against the hands under her head. How so? The way that Tally is so disarmingly straightforward about everything. Her questions that always leave Sarah at a loss for words. Her gaze that is always forthright and unwavering and passionate. Her steady presence and careful touch, always considerate and yet always persistent, threatening to break past all the boundaries that Sarah throws up, consciously and unconsciously, after a lifetime and more of practice. The way Sarah trusts Tally more than anything or anyone in the world, for the sheer reason that Sarah wants to, like she's walking on the edge of a cliff with Tally barely holding on, knowing that Tally will be able to pull her back from the brink with a mere pinky finger, based on nothing but pure trust. The way that Sarah feels so weak before Tally, a feeling that fills Sarah with glee. It reminds her of something that she had thought long lost and long forgotten. Maybe Sarah would be able to feel this way about any girl with red hair and brown eyes and a smile like the sun if she tries hard enough. But she doesn't want to. It is too much to explain to Tally, though, who is still looking at her expectantly. And so she simply takes Tally's head in her hands and kisses her. She knows, after Tally has run her fingers through Sarah's hair enough, had her fill of consuming Sarah's mouth and taste, that Tally knows it will be okay to ask. Can I? Tally mouths eventually, and Sarah nods against her, and she opens herself up to the warm surge of power coming through Tally's linking with her, allowing herself to be known and seen, to be excavated inside and out. As always, just as Sarah is hungry for Tally's warmth, Tally eagerly consumes what she can of Sarah's thoughts and sensations that are pouring into her. All the things that Sarah can't bring herself to say, yet still wants Tally to share in. And so Tally once again gets to sense the vastness of what Sarah feels for her, the bottomless gaping chasm whose depths even Sarah doesn't know yet, the hint of terror lurking at the edges of Sarah's thirst. And when Tally reaches the part that Sarah isn't ready to share yet, she gently pulls back, breaking the physical and mental contact, leaving them both panting and gasping with want. It's Sarah who seeks out Tally again first, pressing soft, slow kisses against Tally's mouth and neck. Tally's fingers run through Sarah's hair, and eventually her movement begins to slow. May I hold you as you sleep? Sarah asks. Tally smiles languidly. That sounds like heaven. They reposition themselves until Tally is leaning back into Sarah's arms, Sarah's face pressed against Tally's hair. Wake me up before you leave? is the last thing Tally says before she falls into slumber, so that I can see you off, Sarah. And all Sarah can say is, yes, of course I will. Please find the fanfiction you just listened to on Archive of Our Own and leave the author some love. Without them, this wouldn't be possible, and we want to thank them from the bottoms of our hearts for creating these amazing stories and keeping the show alive.